out to start, just giving LinkedIn a moment to catch up. And now let's do it. All right, let me do it again. Hey, Rich. All right, here we go. Rich was in and out. All right, here we go. Good morning, podcasters. Today is Thursday, May 28th, 2026. And today, we're asking the uncomfortable podcasting question. Are creators focused on the right growth strategies or just staying busy with more tools, more clips, and more content? So if you're listening live on Clubhouse, hit the share button, top right-hand side of the screen, and share it however Clubhouse lets you. And if you're catching us via podcast, YouTube, etc., please share this episode with a fellow podcaster. And now give us about 30 seconds, and we'll get things rolling. Thanks for being here. The Podcasting Morning Show is powered by Ironic Media, helping podcasters launch, polish, and grow great shows. And by Content Creators Accountant, helping creators build real business behind their content. Good morning again, Podcasting Morning Show. Thank you so much for being here. I am your host, Marc Ronick, and currently on the virtual stage with me, my co-hosts, we have DR Fay, Ralph Estep, Matt Bliss, Sid Meadows, and BC Babbles. We also have on stage from the audience, Dan and Tide, a.k.a. Nikki, on stage. Thank you guys for joining us already. And good morning to those of you who've already joined us live on the video, live on Clubhouse. Gabe, Jessica, Tim, Rich, thank you for being here. Spent some time with Rich yesterday afternoon doing Empowered Podcasting live on all the video streams. And that was a great time. BC Babbles joined us as well. If you want to check that out, by the way, you can go to podcastingmorningshow.com/EPC live. We have the latest edition with BC posted there, so you can just go right to that page and hit play. And also, before we dig into the main content of today's show, this RSS.com article, I wanted to share with you something I've shared yesterday as well. Sometimes it's hard to know what's actually working in your podcast when you're the only one really creating it every week, or at least maybe you're the point person. Sorry, my voice is crazy this morning. Ralph already called me out on it before we got started. So anyway, this is why we created our podcast evaluation series. If you want honest and constructive feedback about your show, all you got to do is submit your podcast at podcastingmorningshow.com/eval, EVAL. We'll review your application, listen to your podcast, and if selected, our team will discuss what's working, what could be stronger, and what other podcasters can learn from your show. Again, that's podcastingmorningshow.com/eval. It's 100% free to participate, so submit your podcast today. And let's dive right in. So this, like I said, and we'll get into this article, but podcasters are doing a lot right now, and they're publishing consistently. They're experimenting with video a lot more these days, using AI, building tools and buying tools and promoting on social media. They're trying to grow, they're trying to monetize, improve their workflow, keep up with everything that's changing around them. And we know, even just from yesterday's show covering all the news, how much things are changing. And yet, according to this RSS.com article, or actually it's a survey, it's called the Podcaster Insights Survey, audience growth is still the biggest challenge. So that brings us to today's big question. Are podcasters doing too much? RSS.com surveyed 195 podcasters in quarter 2 of this year, and a few things stood out. I'll give you some ideas here of where we're going with this, and then we'll break some of these down as we go today. 62% of current podcasters publish weekly or more. 46% of those surveyed say growing an audience is their main podcasting goal right now. 70% of them say that growing their audience is one of their biggest challenges. 51% record video in some way, shape, or form. And among the podcasters who publish video, 63% say video has helped grow their show. 56% are using or experimenting with those AI tools. 39% are currently monetizing their podcast. And 72% say they're currently paying for tools or services related to that or their podcast. So this is what makes the article interesting to me. Podcasters aren't sitting around doing nothing, clearly. They're showing up, they're publishing, they're experimenting, they're investing the time and energy and money into their shows. But even with all of that activity, growth still seems to be that big struggle. So we need to ask questions. Maybe we'll get to some of these today. Are these efforts actually helping us grow? Are they helping us make better content? Are they helping us connect more deeply with listeners and viewers? Or are some of us just stacking more tasks onto an already heavy process, I'll say? So I want to start with this for the team and for everyone here in the room for that matter. When you hear that podcasters are doing more than ever, but growth is still the biggest struggle, what's your first reaction to that? Yeah, Ralph, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you. Good morning, Mark. And I'll give everybody a baby update.
Yes,
we're still in the holding period. We should have some movement on that today. Things are progressing. So thank you for all the people that reached out. Anyway, to answer your question, it's interesting. I had a call yesterday with a content creator. And when you talk about the biggest struggle, doing more than ever, I think the problem is people have neglected the first thing, and that is, who is your audience and who are you trying to reach? I think it's almost easier to do stuff. It's easy to put stuff out. It's easy to do this and do that and do this. But have you taken the time to really focus in on who is your audience? And the reason I say that, this guy's first thing to me yesterday was like, he says, I'm making videos on YouTube, Ralph. How do I make money with this? And I said, who is your audience? And he says, I'm not really sure. And then I said, okay, what are you trying to share with them? He says, that's a really good question, but how do I make money with this? And so I think you've got to start out with, who is your audience? Because you can do a ton of things, Mark, and I think that's where you're going with this. You can do a ton of things, but if you don't have an audience, you don't. And I said something to him. I said, you don't monetize a show, you monetize an audience. And so I think that's part of what the struggle is that we're facing here this morning.
Interesting. By the way, Gabe in the chat says he's kind of shocked that only 39% are monetizing their podcasts. I'm wondering, Gabe, which direction you're shocked. Because I say that because I was kind of shocked too, just in the sense that unfortunately, that feels a little high to me. I don't see enough podcasters monetizing really at all. So around 40% seemed a little surprising to me, and in a good way, I suppose. Dan, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to work the hot pepper, if you know what I mean.
By the way, the hot pepper thing, that's a Clubhouse thing. That's how we get each other's attention here on the virtual stage. Go ahead, Dan.
Two things. First, just real quick, what Gabe, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to monetize it can be pretty hard to monetize a podcast, and that's why nobody's doing it, because it can be really tricky. There's kind of a lot of moving parts. One day we can talk about, like, I came up with something that's kind of easy. There's a bunch of methods out there that are kind of easy, still takes a few steps, but it's probably a different conversation. I wanted to kind of add to what Ralph said, and it is like, you do want to know who your audience is for sure. But like, what I found is more of a psychology thing. And I've been doing like just direct response marketing for about 35 years now. And it's not knowing just who your audience is, but it's like actually knowing how their brains are wired. And I found that your listeners aren't exactly who you think they are. There are two types of people, and you've got to pretty much talk to them different because their brains are wired different. every show is made up of audiences that either run toward benefits or those that run away from pain. And how you're doing all of your calls to action and how you're doing all your messaging really is like one of the key things. Like I created a chart a long time ago that every podcast is, they have a primary audience and a secondary audience, and you want to talk to both of them in all of your messaging. So like a true crime podcast, for example, the primary audience there, believe it or not, are made up of people who are pain avoidance. Like, you
Hmm.
know, they're largely, I love true crime, but it's like I always talk to my co-host who is female, and she just goes crazy about it, about true crime. And I asked, well, why do you like this so much?
Yeah.
And she said, I don't want to find myself waking up chained to some psycho's radiator in his garage. So I would like to know, if that ever happens, what can I do? So like
So this is
that is
for her preparing just in case.
right. And exactly right. It's
Okay.
just like I got to avoid pain at all, at all costs. Where I like true crime, and it's because I'm benefit oriented, like at least in that niche. Like I like a really good story. I mean, sure, I don't want to find myself chained to some radiator. Who does, I ask you?
Well, it depends on what makes you what your pleasure is, I suppose.
Exactly. There are a few. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't mind it. I know.
Okay, different show.
But like even like something like it's like an entertainment based show, something like a movie review podcast. That's benefit oriented, right? Like what am I gonna watch on Netflix this weekend or whatever? But the secondary audience for even a movie show would be pain avoidance, and I fall into both of them. Like I want to know what I'm going to watch on Netflix this weekend, but at the same time, I hate sitting on the couch because I have such a limited amount of time. My wife goes and hangs out with her mom on Friday night. It's the one night where I can just watch TV, and nothing pisses me off more than sitting on the couch, grabbing the Netflix, and then spending 45 minutes trying to figure out what am I going to watch. And then at the end, I listen to podcasts instead, and nothing changes, and it's just BS. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
So understanding who the two, like the primary and the secondary audience is, and then like anyway, you have to know that. And then when you're doing your messaging on social or whatever, those are like it's really easy, like because you just craft one kind of call to action specifically for people who are motivated by running away from pain, and you create the other for people who are motivated by I want to get something out of it, benefit oriented.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. I got to keep moving if several people want to chime in. So thank you I appreciate the insight. And I want to go to Matt Bliss. Matt Bliss, good morning. Matt and I were having a side chat here in the clubhouse room. And he was mentioning that if what did you say here, Matt? I lost it. I think, yeah, Matt, what did you say? I can't find it here and I don't want to misquote you.
Is this the monetization thing? So I said in the first comment when the monetization thing came up, I said, if I make $2 a week, I'm monetized. And Mark responded with, even if you don't make any money. And I pointed out that perhaps defining monetizing compared to being profitable is an important distinction that we should probably make.
Yeah.
With regards to the data in the article too.
Yeah, and that's fair, because technically by definition, if you're making any kind of money, that's monetizing. And I just jumped to though, a lot of us can say we're monetizing our show, and I think then a lot of other people will assume, oh, well, they're making some money. But the real goal here is not just to monetize, it's actually to be profitable with that. So I think we both kind of see it the same way. It's just making sure we're clearly defining those two terms. But what did you want to add to this? And again, just for everyone to reset, the big question I started with is when you hear that podcasters are doing more than ever, but growth is still the biggest struggle, what's the first reaction? What say you, Matt?
Thank you so much for that reminder, because we got so far down the path.
Yes, we did.
I forgot what I was going to say. Two things. Less is more. I think podcasters, even considering growth and stacking all those tactics that you talked about, I think it's always good for them to pare back and analyze what they're doing that's too much, and then bringing it back down to the key stuff, the main drivers, and then starting to add things back again. But also with growth, you have to set milestones for yourself, because growth is infinite. If you're hunting for more of something and you never reach the asymptote of whatever that infinite number is that you never set, then you're always going to be seeking growth. And I think that's one of the things that makes us think it's a perpetual problem. It's because we always want more. And if you listen to enough podcasts where millionaires and billionaires talk about money, the ones that get there and talk about being happy is that they hit their number and then they stop, or they hit their number and they start spending. They don't just continue making more money again, because if you don't hit a number that you set for yourself as a goal, then it's never going to be a thing. Now, to say that, it's not going to be you hit a growth milestone and then you've achieved podcast and then you stop, or you just ride that wave. But I think that hits that perception that there's always growth that's needed.
Yeah.
But for us, setting a goal for ourselves.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point, Matt. Like, I'm thinking about some clients that I've been working with lately that hired me as a consultant, and their goals, there's two in particular I'm thinking of, and their goals are they want to grow. They want to keep growing, and they've been at it for a couple of years. They have a steady audience. They have a few hundred people that tune in every single week, but they're still wanting more. I want more. I want more. I want more. And it's at some point, it's like, well, why? And how many do we really need at that point? Right? Like, they're not even trying to monetize. There's one client I'm thinking of. They're not even trying to monetize. Like, they don't care about monetizing. They're doing fine. They just want to reach lots and lots of people. But I feel like that will eventually could just lead to insanity, because it's like, it's like, when do you stop? And why do you stop? Right? Like, I think that's a question for all of us to think about. When do we stop, and why?
It's why there's a practical component, or at least a good one, a practical component to any algebraic course in mathematics. You can talk about x equals, 5 plus y all day, but if you're not filling in the x and the y, then what's the point in filling out the formula? And Ralph was filling in the formula for his client. His dude wanted more money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that stuff, but I want more money. And you're like, well, X, Y, and Z become X, knowing audience, Y, where they are, Z, how to leverage that into what becomes money.
Mm-hmm.
But they wanted money. They need to fill out the variables so that they can get there. Define the values.
Matthew for the win with the word algebraic.
Should we hit the jingle?
Epistemological, antipodian, multifactorial, slightly Tasmanian. Yeah. Hyperbolic, bureaucratic, bit dramatic. Existential, mate, it's all schematic. Sesquipedalian, mildly Australian, cynical, critical, still conversational. Obfuscation, discombobulation, big words, small patience for the situation.
It's a longer jingle, but it still makes me groove the whole time. I'll take it. Thank you, Matt. Now, I know a lot of people still want to chime in. I'm going to go to Sid, and then I know, BC, you had something as well. Sid, good morning. What did you want to add?
Good morning, everybody. Can you please add, I believe it was acetate or acetope to the wheel of jargon, please?
Okay, you got it.
Explaining it the way Matt used it, please. So is this conversation about monetization or is it about growth? Because we went down monetization, but I thought your question was about growth.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially about growth, but it quickly moved over to monetization. And, pick your poison.
So I'm going to answer the question. And I honestly, my show is growing and we're working really hard. And I'm really happy with where it's growing, how it's growing, where it's growing, and the reach we're getting. But I feel like I'm on a treadmill, or I'm on I'm a hamster on a spinning wheel, because it always is nonstop, always happening, always having to do something, always testing this email idea, always testing this post idea, changing, formats of newsletters and blogs and things of that nature. So for me, it's a hamster wheel feeling, but it feels really good because I'm seeing the result that I wanted, which was, growth, strategic, incremental, intentional growth of my show, and it's happening.
So, Sid, this hamster wheel analogy, it's like, when do you get off the wheel?
in December when we quit publishing. Really, actually, that's really the best time to grow at your show. Honestly, when you're not publishing or when you should be doing it. Remembering January of this year, my show grew exponentially and we did not publish at all. Like exponentially. Like we had 3,000 people listen to the show in the month of January with no publication and very little marketing or advertising around it. So I don't know that you ever really get, I just think maybe it slows down a little bit.
Okay, that's fair. It slows down a little bit. And again, I think where I'm getting really infatuated here, I'm hyper fixated on is, again, this idea. It's like, when do we say when? When are we satisfied? Right. And even to Matt's point, it's like, yeah, we can set those goals, but then what? Like once we hit those goals, then what? We just more? I feel like this is where we set ourselves up for disaster.
But isn't that just like life? I mean, when I was in the 9-to-5 world, I was constantly, I gotta do more work for that bonus. Oh, that Christmas bonus is coming out, so I gotta shine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always but I don't mind that because I am bettering myself. It's like I'm in a competition with myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, there is such a thing as a healthy dose of
right.
that too. Yes. Yeah, I'm with you there. That's a good point. Thank you, DR. And BC, hold tight. Tide has been raising her hand multiple times around this particular part of the conversation. So I feel like she has something to add here. So Tide, go for it. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, I apologize. I was just going to say that I think that my fixation on the monetization part comes from an experience that I had yesterday. And that is, it was a client who came to me. It was actually a friend, a colleague, and he wanted to grow his audience, and it wasn't specifically for podcasting, but it was about growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had no idea how to do it. He's never engaged in any level of entrepreneurial activity before. And so, but he was all about the money. How do I sell this? What do I sell it for? And he said that he went to YouTube, and the videos that he had listened to were, just of randos basically saying, charge what you're worth and don't undercharge yourself. Don't do this, don't do that. And he came in with that kind of mentality. And so I had asked him, I said, well, sort of like Ralph, I said, do you know who you want to get this product to? For the record, I think you have a good product. It's just you're so focused on the price of everything that I want to know like how you're expecting to, I want to know how you're expecting to sell this. And I also want to know who your audience is, like Ralph said. So we started talking about the how he wanted to monetize. And when we spoke about the how first, then it became clear to me that his particular audience was 3 segments. It was community colleges, homeschool moms, and public and private school teachers. But the product itself would have to be specifically tailored to each one. And so when it came to the growth aspect, there was no way in his mind mentally, because he was so focused on the dollar amount and monetization. He was so focused on that there was no way to get him to realize that I could think of anyway, to realize how important his audience was until we started talking about the how and what monetization actually meant for him. What are you actually looking to monetize? How are you looking to monetize it? And where do you see yourself selling your products and services and all of that? And once those questions were asked, it opened his eyes because he realized what he didn't know. He said, oh shoot, I don't know what I don't know. And that helped the growth of him personally. And then also it helped him realize that he could sell his products successfully if he understood that piece first. And that's why I say, if you're talking to someone and they say, hey, I want to monetize my show, I want to monetize this, I want to monetize that, it might be important to consider, especially if they're stuck on that and they're stuck on the dollar amount and they just want to make the big money, so to speak. It may be important to ask, how do you want to do this? Are you thinking about running ads? Are you thinking about doing webinars? Are you thinking about having your own website? those types of things. How do you want to monetize? Because then that person will realize, oh shoot, I don't know. I have no idea. And then once that becomes clear, then the audience factor may be a successful byproduct of that.
Nikki, thank you for sharing that timely example. It's interesting that happened just yesterday. And I see here Matt Bliss is agreeing with you, saying spot on, Tide. If you work backwards from money and the price point, it's a rough time. Yeah, agreed. And thank you again for that, Tide. And BC, thank you for being so patient. What did you want to add to all this?
Good morning, everyone. I want to take a slightly different approach to this real quick. And I'm wondering if part of the growth issue for podcasters is the perspective or the perception of what podcast nowadays even is. We talk so much on this show about how different evolutions in the industry are pulling the definition of podcasting every which way. And I think if I'm not a podcaster and I'm hearing all these things about like what Spotify is doing, what Amazon's doing, and hearing about how so much content nowadays is becoming so AI non-human driven, I'm wondering if there's a point in me looking for a podcast I like and connecting with it and staying with it and helping it grow over time. And so I feel like the way things are changing, that it creates this kind of cacophony of all this AI sound, all this saturation sound, and it kind of, I think, might limit the perspective of being loyal to a creator and even helping any kind of particular show grow over time.
I see. Okay. So I think what I'm hearing is, just to be clear about this. So you're basically saying, is it that you feel like the market is so saturated that it's hard for audiences to really stay loyal to one or a couple of their favorite shows?
Saturation is one part of it. The other part of it is, again, with like we talked about Spotify yesterday and how the definition of what a podcast is or what a podcaster is being so stretched in so many directions. I think it's hard to determine what people should expect from the idea of podcasting at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And Matt, you had something else you wanted to add? Matt, I can't hear you. You're on mute, my friend.
It keeps turning off my mute button again for some reason.
Weird.
Double taps. I need to check my mouse. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Very good. So the definition of podcast, I think we get caught up on that a lot, and we're in a space here where we have access and understand a little bit more about more than what the listener and the audience member might interact with. I don't know about you guys, but there are still so many people that have no idea what a podcast is, but they love Amy Poehler's new show, or, Andrew Huberman, he's the bomb. I love listening to him for 3 hours talk about one very specific routine or subsystem in the human body. I think focusing on what the listeners interact with, or the watchers interact with, is probably the most important part to focus on. And one thing you did say there, BC, was the idea of the parasocial relationship. You didn't say it explicitly, but creating a relationship with your favorite host or creator. I think doing that is the key part. But I don't think starting with podcast and working backwards from there to make that happen with the general principles that get thrown around at the beginning of a podcaster's journey, I think every creator is a little bit different. And if they're open to doing all the things we've talked about so far, that everybody's talked about, in kind of stepping back and reflecting and analyzing how your content connects with whatever audience you need, I think that shows you the path to getting more people into your show to listen. That doesn't talk about monetization specifically, which seems to be a big topic, but like that parasocial relationship, that's going to loop back, BC. And I think if I had advice for you, I would say capitalize on that, because Patreon, for example, is now not being, it's more of a social platform guided towards listeners and consumers. The creators are taking a backseat to the platform, but the next iteration of that will be creator first, better focus on parasocial relationships and creating personalities. Now that's a very ambitious take from me there, but I think parasocial relationships, that's what we should be focused on. And it's what I think podcasters should be focused on. That's the hamster wheel that I think you'll love running on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Matt. Yeah, and I think Ralph wanted to add something too. Go ahead.
I want to drop a bomb in here. And no, be seriously, because when I actually wrote a blog article about this article today that everybody can check out, we'll put a link in the show notes. But I think the thing that stood out to me about this article, because I want to get back to this article because there's a lot of good stuff in here. I think what this article is telling us is the easy era of podcasting is over. We've been telling people that when you buy a microphone and you be consistent and you show up for your audience every week, that it's just going to magically happen. Guess what, friends? That era is gone. We are in a much different place now. BC alluded to it. The saturation of the market, the professionalism of what's going on in the market. We've got to realize that what we have now, and I've said this on the show many times, are media companies. It's not as simple as just the way it used to be. It was simple before. Get a simple microphone and just start talking into a microphone and your audience will come. We've gotten beyond that. And I think that we have to recognize that, because there's a lot of people that think, because I talked to one yesterday, they think they're just going to jump into this, buy a simple microphone and start talking, and magically all these people are going to appear. But growth doesn't work like that. Growth comes with clarifying what you're doing, positioning yourself, promoting what you're doing, and you've got to build a reason for listeners to come back, and you got to figure out how to get them to your place in the first place. So one of the things that I want to talk about is what's been the hardest part of growing your podcast, or everybody here, because all of us have been in this, I'll call it a cyclone of trying to make this work. What has worked for us? Because the thing it talks about in this article, and I agree with this, is it says video is no longer optional. It's very bold in this article and says that. I agree, because I think there's discoverability in there. But I think we should pivot this, because it's real easy to get stuck on monetization, because honestly, the people that I talk to, everybody focuses on that, because everybody wants this to be a side hustle or be their main job. And that's fantastic. But I think we've got to go a little deeper and say, how do we grow the audience first? So what has been the hardest part of growing your podcast? Because that's what I think is going to be valuable to people here this morning.
And Ralph, I just want to add something too, just as far as how things are changing when we talk about growing an audience. And I think you were saying something around, at least I wrote this down, so I don't know if it came from my head or you, but the idea of really making a solid effort into growth, like putting the time and effort into finding ways to grow if that's your goal. And I think this is the other point that gets missed a lot. If it's not working, try something else. I see so many of us in this community, outside of this community, in the overall podcasting community, that focus on, okay, I got to keep doing this over and over and over again, and eventually they'll come. But if it's not working now, the chances of it working later are slim to none. So I think a lot of us just get, including yours truly, I do this sometimes too, I get so caught up in the rhythm and the routine and applying the things that I learned originally and just thinking eventually this will work. But I think at some point we have to stop and say, is it working? And do we need to try something else?
Mark, you're right on. And that's the truth, is we have to accept that things are different now. The way of doing things before have changed. Yes, we still have to give remarkable content. We still have to have clear audio. Those are givens now. Consistency is a given. We used to tell people, well, just show up every week. And if you show up, it's going to happen. You can be showing up with garbage content that nobody's interested in, and it's not going to magically grow. I can stand out front of my house here and look at my pickup truck and say, you're a Lamborghini. Well, guess what? I can do that for 10 years straight. It's still going to be a pickup truck. This is just the way of the world. And people need to stop buying into this facade of, if you build it, they will come. You've got to figure out, are you building something that people want? Are you building something that they find value in? And if you're not, change what you're doing, because consistency alone is not going to get you there.
Right. And that's the key, right? Like consistency alone won't do it, but it is a factor. It is important. But so it's show up, be consistent, and try new things if the things that you're already doing isn't working, in my opinion.
And have a strategy, Mark. That's the other side of this.
Sure.
I think a lot of people don't have a strategy. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to run this thing like a business from the front end. And what is your strategy? If you opened up a hot dog stand, you got to have a strategy to how to get people to come up there and buy hot dogs from you. If you sit there every day and nobody walks up the window to buy a hot dog, you got to go figure out what's going on and how to fix that. I think with a lot of content creators, they don't do that. They say, well, I'll just keep doing it. I'll post on social media. I'll write blog posts. If nobody is connecting to it, stop doing what you're doing. It's not working.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And we've got lots of people chiming in. Sambaza says in the chat, my question is, if you remain the same and constantly keep making the same content, we know that YouTube and all the other content providers change their algorithms. Maybe at some point your content will become noticeable to the audience that you're already looking for if they change. Ralph, you're disagreeing? And then, by the way, Sid, you're on deck. Go ahead.
I think I don't agree, Sambaza. I love you, brother, but I don't agree with that because what is going on YouTube right now is you got a bunch of clowns out there just chasing the algorithm. Well, let me go do this and let me go do this, but no one is putting out stuff that is actually changing the dynamic. And if you just follow the trends, guess what happens? The trends stop and you're waiting to see when it's going to catch up with you. So I respectfully disagree with that approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a waiting game that you may never win. Right? Because if you're going to just sit back and wait for the algorithm, and I know you're not necessarily, Sambaza, saying sit back and wait for the algorithm, but if that is kind of a sidebar thing that's happening, I think you're just going to be waiting a very long time. Sure, you might pull that lever on the slot machine and it might win one time, but it's not a strategy in my opinion. And I do say that, like you say, Ralph, with all due respect, because Sambaza, I love you, and it's just, you could try that strategy, but I think it's going to drive a lot of people crazy. Sid, what did you want to add? And then Matt, you're on deck, and then we'll hear from DR as well.
And so one of the things we have to remember about growth is, you can get them there. They hit play and they start to listen, right? But you got to keep them. And you got to be sure you got doing the right things to keep them so they come back and hit play the next time you publish, or they go into your back catalog and they start to listen to others. So, and I mentioned this several weeks ago, I got 697, I haven't looked in a while, followers on Apple, but 900 and something listeners. My job is to convert those listeners to followers. They're coming to listen, they're just not following the show. They maybe they're not coming back or not. And so I think that growth is a multi-pronged approach, but if you get them there, you got to keep them there. And that is, to me, a completely different strategy. And one of the ways that I did it, to earlier conversation, I started something new. My spin, I call my hot takes the spinny wheel.
Yep.
People love that episode. And it's a lot of fun to create. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of laughs. There's some disagreements. And my audience can't get enough of it. And I get messages every time we publish one of those right now, which is only once a month. And so we're trying something new. And we've done a lot of new things, but that to me is the biggest new thing that we've done that I think is helping to attract new people and then hopefully keeping them. So you do have to always be trying and testing.
Thank you, Sid. Appreciate that. Let's check back in with Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
I'd like to step back with a philosophical take just on the nature of things. I've set a timer for 3 minutes. When that goes off, my time stops. Do we agree? Is 3 minutes okay?
That's fine.
Very good. So all the stuff that has been covered so far, like particularly Ralph's stuff, very on point about how the nature of podcasting has changed. But if you're in podcasting for long enough, and I don't feel like I have, but I've observed it for long enough, what you realize is that the podcaster's journey doesn't vary all that much. At the very beginning, they seek out information, they get enough information to begin, then they seek to optimize, and they end up in places like this, a place with experienced community of podcasters to find out more information. Then they find that information that they need, they start trying stuff, and I think if they do the right things, they do what Sid is talking about. They test, they iterate, they reflect. Did it work? No, toss it, try something new. Getting on that treadmill is really important. But the thing we need to recognize is that the industry has been constantly shifting for a very long time. But the new listener experience, the new podcaster experience doesn't change, because they do come in with the build it and they will come mentality. They do look for the best quality microphone to start with. They do wonder why no one's listening because I put it on all the platforms. This is an experience that I don't think anybody disagrees with when they come in as a podcaster, brand new and fresh. This is where, and controversial opinion incoming, where I think podcasting, if it was more gate-kept, if there was a gatekeeping aspect to this, where you had to get a podcast license to be able to start creating your podcast, then we might be able to fix this problem. But no matter how many consultants we get, no matter how many intro to podcasting courses, they're all layered with opinions. They're layered with experiences across 25 years. Who knows how long that time has been going on? It's constantly changing and shifting. The only thing that you can rely on explicitly is your own experience, that internal struggle that you have, the way that you cope with it, and informing that struggle with the experiences of others. So the thing that really triggered me there, Ralph, was you saying that podcasting has changed, build it and they will come. It's not that easy anymore. It hasn't been that easy since 2014. I think people never see that though. Once they go from a listener to a podcaster, that journey is huge. And the misconceptions are even bigger. But how we address that problem, I don't know. I think the best place to start is a show like this, where you hear all of the great opinions and just really think about yourself and do what Sid's doing. That was my 3 minutes.
Timer. Matt, thank you. Well done. I appreciate that. And yeah, and I agree. That did make me pause too. And with all due respect, Ralph, yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I agree with you. I mean, even the first 10 years were not easy. They were easier, maybe, than they are today. But those first 10 years weren't as easy either, because those first 10 years, we were just trying to convince people of what a podcast even is. Like, no clue what a podcast is. You know, now we're trying to define podcasts these days. Back then, people would look at me like I was crazy when I would say I have a podcast. Right. So it was easier, yes, but I don't want people to think that there was a point where it was super easy to do. It just wasn't.
And we're all figuring it out. I think the best way to think about it for yourselves is a video game overhead map as a fog of war. And the more you discover, the more there's things to consider. And no one's got it 100% figured out. They just look successful from the outside. But if you got on the inside of the Rogans and the Bartletts and all of this kind of thing, you'd find out a whole lot more much quicker.
So Matt, what's the hardest part here then, Matt? Let's talk about that, because that's where you're going, is what's the hardest part? If it's always been hard, which I disagree with, by the way, I think it's harder now than it's ever been because there's more competition than there's ever been. But what do you think the hardest part of growing a podcast is now?
I think the hardest part is people realizing it's their own personal journey and not an extrinsic one. There you go. Add that to the board.
Mm-hmm.
So much of what podcasters do when they come into the space is look for the external things, because the more they discover, the more that they don't know, the more that they rely on outside sources that they don't understand yet to tell them what they need to do. This is a pet theory that I'm putting together. I call it podcaster knowledge divergence. There has to be a point in time where the podcaster becomes empowered enough to trust their own instincts, to inform themselves so that they can answer their own questions, and then seek and set all these milestones of growth that we're talking about. I'm not going to be able to give you the answer of what's the hardest thing to do, because anything that I say will be the hardest for me is going to be easy for someone else. Guaranteed, SEO and marketing, not my bag. But someone else here is going to say, oh man, easiest thing in the world. I've got a website that gets 3,000 hits per day. But at the same time, they might struggle with their audio quality. But I'm in here going, well, it's super easy. You just drop $400 on an AI algorithmic machine learning plugin, and that just dials that sucker right up. I think it's all about the intrinsic internal experience. The hardest thing is trusting yourself when you learn enough about podcasting to inform your own experience. And that feeling of saturation and competition, as opposed to collaboration, which I think is what it should be, that feeling like you're in an overwhelming space. I think we can see everybody's desks in that study room. But if we just focus on our own desk, we're going to pass the test, and what we get as a score isn't going to matter. There is a finite number of resources, eyes, hours in the day in the universe, but ultimately it's your own journey. Now, that isn't to dismiss that there's external things as part of this that will help inform your internal growth. And this is why I think Sid is the secret winner of this episode, because he's talked about getting on the hamster wheel and trying stuff. The key about succeeding in podcasting today, and the hardest thing that people find in podcasting itself, this has gone way beyond my 3 minutes. Sorry, guys. But the hardest thing is getting comfortable with that testing and iteration process. And more importantly, setting the goals for yourself to find the results you want, and then not necessarily settling. Because Mark asked us earlier, when is the when? When are we done? We're never done. But we can be happy with our process and seek the flourishing we want from our podcast when we have that system and process in place to inform our intrinsic value. Now, all of that, super controversial, super philosophical, hard to justify in whatever 20 minutes I've taken of this episode. And people won't like it. They don't like to hear it. And I'm not saying that anybody here is going to come at me for it. And Ralph, definitely not coming at you for your opinion on that one, because everyone's opinion is valid. It's why the most common answer to anything in podcasting is still, it depends. And forever we're trying to reduce that down to something closer to maybe of these three things. There is still so much unknown and so many paths we can carve for ourselves. I think that's going to change in the next 5 years, where there'll be more opportunities to become more. I think the biggest problem is trying to define podcasting at the very beginning, but it's all a journey for ourselves.
Hey, 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 hey! Eyes up, don't give now. You're on camera, stay with me now.
Come back to me. What life can you see? Open those eyes.
Yeah, right now. Don't check out now.
Now we're playing that because we noticed someone on camera was dozing a little bit, BC.
Gotta keep that 3 minute mark, man. Gotta keep that 3 minute mark. I'm only human in the Western Hemisphere. I got so much caffeine in my system.
It's all good. Everything I just said, if people have just like put their phone down and gone to make a coffee and come back, absolutely fine. This is not this is a like way many years down the path kind of, I have to sit down and get comfortable and listen to something like that to be able to pass what I was saying. Might even only make sense to me.
Before you chime in, Ralph, I just wanted to say, I don't think that it was necessarily you, Matt, that BC was falling asleep. It happens on occasion. That's why we have a jingle for BC.
Let me blame somebody, Mark. Dang.
All right, go ahead, Ralph.
Matt, I just want to say I agree with you and disagree with you at the same time, and we could spend an hour talking about the philosophical parts of that, because one of the things I think that a lot of new podcasters neglect is finding a mentor and finding someone to help them to get past the stuff that there are things that you can't just find on your own journey. I'm the definition of that. When I first started out, what I should have done first was go and hire a speaking coach. I should have went and hired somebody to help me with my tech. I should have went and hired somebody or found a group like this or mentored with somebody to help me build stuff, because on my own journey, I wasn't getting where I needed to get. But I want to take it back, because I think, again, what is the hardest part of growing your podcast? Is it getting discovered in the first place? Is it getting people to stick around? Is it getting people, listeners, to share the show? Like, for example, Mark sent me a message yesterday, said, we got to put this on our list to talk about. How can we get a guest to share the show when they're on the show? What are those things that are the stress points for you right now? That's question one. And question two, what are you finding right now that's actually working? Because what I'd like to give people today is some things that are actually working, so that if you tune in to watch this episode or listen to this episode, you can say, oh, that's some great idea. Let me try these couple things out.
Yeah, I think that that's a great place. Where are things working for you? I think, and that's a great way to wrap up this episode today, is take a few minutes to really find those things, share those things that are working for us. And yeah, I will share some of mine in a moment, but I want to hear from others as well. Think about your answer. I know Tide wants to chime in too, and I think it was around what we've just been discussing. So Tide, go for it. And if you want to share anything that's been working for you as far as growth or success with your show, please share. Go for it.
Sure, thank you. I was going to say that I agreed with Sambaza in the chat when he said, if I continue doing sort of the same ish, emphasis on the same ish thing, might that lead me to my right audience eventually? And I think that is a fair point to make, because if you're jumping around, which is what a lot of people do, they put out a couple episodes, it doesn't stick, then they try something new, and then they put out a couple episodes and it doesn't stick, and then it does, and then they keep doing that, and they're on that hamster wheel constantly. I know we've said the hamster wheel a couple times today, but they're on that hamster wheel constantly jumping around trying to figure out what sticks. And the most, I would say, prominent indicator of failure is that mentality. It's, let me throw paint against the wall, let me see what sticks, and then just kind of figure it out from there. But that is such a poor mentality. If I did that in any aspect of my life, whether it's teaching or something else, and I said, well, let me just try a bunch of stuff and see what sticks, and I did that continually, how much success does anybody think that I would actually, or anyone else would have in this room, if that's what they did throughout their life? You have to have sometimes, and I'm saying, emphasizing sometimes you have to have a singular focus, and you're going to make tweaks and modifications along the way, of course, as you get smarter, more data comes in, more insight comes in, more understanding, more wisdom, more experience. All of that is going to come, and you're going to develop and change and grow and evolve. But if you're sticking with the thing that feels right to you, you can feel the success coming. So like with you, Mark, I'll use you as an example. You could feel that calling your show Podcasting Morning Chat wasn't the right move anymore. There was a shift, something happened, you could feel it, and you knew, probably couldn't explain it because it wasn't something necessarily measurable, but you could feel that calling your podcast the Podcasting Morning Show was the right move, and you knew internally that it was the right decision,
100%.
No matter what anybody else said, no matter anything else. And then you also knew another thing. You also knew that moving your show to 8 a.m. was going to have a better result for you in different ways, and you could feel that. You knew somehow, some way, intuitively. Now, some of it may have been algorithmic and analytical and through conversations, all that. That's all fine and dandy. That's part of the process. But there was something innate in you that realized, if I change my podcast to 8 a.m., I can feel the success knocking on my door. I can feel the people, the guests, the opportunities, all the stuff that's going to come with it. I know it's there. And that's what I think Sambaza was trying to get at with his comment, is that if I can feel that I'm headed in the right direction, and I know intuitively that success is going to come if I keep trudging along and I keep putting this stuff out there, I know it's going to come eventually, then I think you should stick with that, because changing it up and trying new things and all that is wonderful. And you have to do that 1,000,000,000%. But there is a level of success that comes from focusing, concentrating on what you want to do, rather than jumping around like, some ADHD lunatic.
Well said, Tide. Thank you. And yeah, I think, look, if we're talking about patience, and if that was what Sambaza was ultimately getting at, and not being super specific to being patient for an algorithm, but just being patient with the systems, with the strategies, with the approach, yes, I say yes, we've got to be patient. Look, it took us 4 years to really see significant growth with the Podcasting Morning Show. And I'm not blaming anybody, right? Like, I think that there were some instances that I blame myself for that, right? That it took up to 4 years to start seeing real growth. But I was patient. And yeah, I think that there is something to be said about intuition. And when you just feel like this is the right move and it's nagging at you, I think it's worth exploring. So I'm with you there. And by the way, I did want to quickly share what Jessica shared in the chat about her strategy. She said, my strategy is to create a bridge between literature and human healing. I want to be a reflective companion for as long as my heart is called to be. Personal development and character elevation, in parentheses it says, because there is duality in connection. Lives in the purpose of just walking with each other or walking each other home. So yeah, I love that. I think that's beautiful, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and DR, you've been waiting a long time. Did you want to chime in?
Yeah. So we all have kind of agreed that you go for a goal, and if it's not working, you pivot with the method that you're trying to do. But the question is, how long do you give it before you realize time to change things up?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, right? Like some people I'm sure would have given up if they were on my path with the Podcasting Morning Show. They probably would have given up a year or two into it. Right.
I think a lot depends on your cadence. Are you doing a show every day? Are you doing a show once a week? Are you doing a show once a month? I think a lot that has to factor in.
Yeah, I agree with you. BC, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, and I think for me, two things that have helped my growth, and I got two shows. One that I've been working on for years, one that I've been working on only since September. And I hate to say it, but the one since September is doing better. And I think part of that is because one, I've found a capacity to be a little not super PC. I talk about, job seeker chaos and whatnot. And I think people, are going to come to my show and say, oh, he'll talk about my narcissistic boss. Love that. Let's delve in. Other part of it is also, I never just post the episode on distribution. It's a 3-step hit. It's on Substack, so it's immediately a blog post. So there's SEO there for search engines. It's going to Apple and Spotify, but also it's immediately shared to socials every single episode. Boom, boom, boom. 3-step hit in multiple spots. And I think giving every single episode that opportunity to shine in as many spots as possible every single time has helped me see the better numbers with this shorter term show than my long-term years show. So it's about, now I got to swap that around and make it work for both.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that your more recent show is the one that's doing better because you've had all the experience from the first show to learn from, whether you knew it or not, right? Like
Exactly.
you put in the different, you had a different approach toward this second show than you did probably when you first started that first show. So that makes a lot of sense. I see that kind of thing happen all the time. Just to go back to what's working for the Podcasting Morning Show lately, I think it is that consistency that I've already touched on. And it's also trying those new things, right? Like we've added a bunch of jingles, and it's not to say that those jingles is what's growing my audience, but it's adding something. It's adding character to the show. It's giving people another way to connect with us. Not the only way, but another way to connect with us, right? We've started bringing back more interviews. We used to do interviews for a short period of time a couple years ago, and then I got away from it. Ralph has encouraged me to let's bring more interviews back, and they are working beautifully and helping our growth a lot, not just with our audience, but also with making connections within the industry. And that's taking us a long way because now those people are starting, I'm seeing it, they're starting to recommend our show and they're starting to come back and listen to our show. Right. So I'm making those kinds of steps and I'm being as patient as I can. Sure, behind the scenes, sometimes I'm banging my head against the wall because I want something to happen. Right. But it does happen. It's not usually that viral hit that's making the difference. It's the slow growth that we're impatient with that's actually making the difference. So yeah, it is sticking with it. And DR, to your point, I don't know that there's a magic answer to when do we say, when is it enough, or how much time do we put into something, right? I don't know. It all depends. Because some audiences might react quicker than others. Some strategies may never work, but it just takes time. You got to give things a few months at least, I think, generally speaking. You got to take a few months to see if something's actually going to take. Really cool conversation today, everybody. Thank you. And I know that, as we tend to do here, we go in different directions. Even after we ask a question, we tend to stray a little bit. Good job, team, in bringing us back to some of these questions and making sure that we answer them. So I hope that we served you, our audience member, today. And if you want to chime in, by all means, reach out to us at podcastingmorningshow.com. There's lots of ways that you can chime in and be a part of this conversation too. And a reminder that you can come back tomorrow, because we do this every Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern time. And you can find out how at podcastingmorningshow.com/join us. So until tomorrow, make it a great day, everybody. Take care. Thanks for the coins,